I don't know why not we join method in the class Krishna, Dr. Krishna.
Yeah. So anyway, we are going to discuss about Buddhist epistemology today. Last week we have been discussing the epistemology in science, right? And you are supposed to write a summary based on one of the readings, right?
Yeah.
Are you supposed to submit it this week or probably next week?
This week.
This week, right?
Oh, before next Tuesday.
Mm.
So we have 3 days. 3 days left.
Yeah. So you can look at any of the 2 documents and then write your summary. I realized that the document on Buddhist epistemology that was sent to everybody is a bit difficult, right?
I didn't know that.
I was trying to find out complete document covering epistemological aspects in Buddhism, but I did not really find. There are discussions here and there, and some of the documents are too large. So I wanted a shorter document, and then I found this one. So I sent it to everybody, but yeah, but I realized that this document that I sent earlier on Buddhist epistemology is quite difficult for a different reason, because the epistemological approaches that are discussed within the Suttanta or in early Buddhist text is different. Whereas this document that I sent to you earlier, that is actually mostly focusing on the epistemological aspects from the Abhidharma perspective. So in the Abhidharma, you have the discussion of momentariness, right? Momentariness of dharmas. And so the discussion provided there is how actually cognition or perception is taking place, who is the knower and what is being known, right? And in how many moments the action is taking place. You see, so that is why it appears to be, good morning, Achan. That is why it appears to be a little complex and difficult. So one has to have a prior understanding with regard to how dharmas function, and how does the cognitive process takes place, and so on. Then it would be easier to understand. But anyway, we'll try to go through the document and discuss something so that we can have some understanding, with regard to Buddhist epistemology based on that document. Especially the document that I sent to you today is by Professor K.N. Jayadilake. So he is focusing more on early Buddhist text. So his approach is more on, the validity of knowledge based on, direct perception, direct realization or revealed truth. Revealed truth means in the time of the Buddha or even before the Buddha, in the Vedic tradition especially, the idea was that all these Vedic text, mantras and everything, they have been revealed by some seers or sages. So these sages, they have been carrying out their own practices and they came up with these messages and they are claiming that these are from the heaven, from some kind of superpowers, right? Some kind of supreme spirits or gods. So they have heard them directly, and that is what they have remembered, and they have been communicating with people. So once it is said with regard to Vedic text, that means you cannot question them because this came down from the heavenly world, from the God. So these are words of the higher spirits, right? So you cannot question them. The only thing that you can do is you can interpret them. You can try to understand them, right? And this whole business of interpretation or explanation was taken up by these Brahmin class. So that was the uh, condition at that time. But then there were some people who have been trying to understand things using their intellect. So they are mostly logicians or philosophers, you can say. They have been trying to understand things using logic. So this is one category of people. And there are other people who have been, focusing on their direct experiences, own direct experiences. So Buddha falls into that category, that you can take support of text, you can take support of logic, but ultimately what you can say real and truth for yourself is something that you yourself understand fully, you yourself realize fully. Okay, so that is the approach taken by the Buddha. So personal, you can say that personal verification, personal understanding, or direct knowing, direct perception. Okay, so not coming to any conclusion just by following logic or based on text. And this is actually very clear in the Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha says that do not just go by text, do not just go by logic, do not just go by tradition, right? Do not just believe because it was told by your teacher. But it does not mean that you are supposed to reject all of this. What it means is that, okay, you have heard something from tradition, from a teacher, from a text, but you yourself try to examine it, understand it. How do you, experience it, or how do you see it?
And another thing, from my experiences, I think that Sata is important. And the one thing is for having something that I cannot understand, maybe not because that is, but that is wrong. Because my understanding is that.
That is true. That is true.
Yes, I have worked in one thing that we haven't is never did teacher examine it or not. First, we have to not to reject first. Maybe it's because my understanding is low.
That is true, yes. So in the beginning, of course, you have to have a certain faith or a certain, belief in a certain teacher, in a certain tradition. And because without having any kind of, ground yourself, you are not ready to examine teachings or statements from any teacher, any text, you say. So yeah.
Yeah, so about the when I read this article, and it says that what is Buddhist epistemology? I think that Buddhist epistemology indicates the thought of Dharma killing. So it's actually about the concept of Dharma killing. For me, well, there are some concepts of Dharma killing, and I read this, it seems understood, but not. I feel that
Dharma what?
Dharma killing.
Theory?
The Dharma killing.
Dharma Kirti. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So that is basically the tradition of Madhyamaka system. So you are familiar with Acharya Nagarjuna and Dharma Kirti, and also what is the other one? Dignaga. These are his students, Acharya Nagarjuna's students and yeah, student of the students. So in his tradition, and these are the people who have really developed this Buddhist epistemology and Pramanavada, Buddhist logic, all these things. They are the people who have developed fully. Yeah. So I came to know that in India, especially in different universities, particularly in philosophy department, and also probably, I'm not sure, even in the department of law, apart from just religious studies, in these departments also they study the philosophy of Nagarjuna, philosophy of Dignaga and Dharmakirti. So especially when they discuss, logic and epistemology, they focus on their text. So yes, what you are saying is true, because Saddha is one of the important factor in Buddhism as well, right? But in any case, it is not a blind faith. Why? Because why do you need to have faith or conviction in a certain teacher or in a certain teaching or a system of thought? Because you are convinced by that. For some reason, you are attracted to that and you want to explore more. So when you have that attitude in your mind, you are devoted to the system, you are devoted to the teacher, until and unless you become sufficiently knowledgeable to judge your own understanding, or even you are able to question the system. So you have to have faith. That is true. There is a statement in Pali, I think Achan must be familiar with that. Saddhaya tarate yogo. Saddhaya tarate yogo. Yeah, so in that statement, the emphasis is given on faith. So it says that if you consider this samsara as a ocean or as a big flood, if you have strong faith in the teaching of the Buddha, in the triple gem, by faith alone, you can cross this ocean of samsara. So saddha is given that much importance in that context. But of course, first of all, your faith has to be very strong. Secondly, you need to know towards who or towards what you have your faith. Not towards anything else, but towards the triple gem, right? So even in the life of the Buddha, you can see that Siddhartha, when he renounced home life, he was a prince, right? So he can easily become a king. But all these things were not attracted to him. So what is the thing that, moved him to live home life, to go to forest? You see, so he must have strong determination, strong resolution, a strong kind of feeling to go out and stay in the forest without food, without attendance, right? And he went through 6 years of extreme ascetic practices. So what was the driving force? So that you can say a kind of conviction, a kind of faith that there is something there, I have faith in that, I'm going to achieve it. And because of that, he has been going to different teachers and so on. So when he was approaching different teachers, he was staying there trying to learn their techniques and methods, right? So, and only after that, after getting training for some times, he is able to understand if it is working for him or not. Then he leaves that teacher and goes to another teacher, until finally he met these two great teachers, Alara Kalama and Uddakarama Buddha. They were well known, but even after meeting them, after getting his necessary training under them, he realized that he is still not satisfied. He doesn't think that is enlightenment. So he says that I don't think that this is the experience of enlightenment. There is still something lacking. So he left everyone and he figured out his own way, right? And as soon as he attained enlightenment, when he decided to share his knowledge, he first thought of these two teachers because he was thinking that they are very close to attaining enlightenment. So he wanted to help his teachers. But by then, he came to know that they passed away already because they were old. And after that, he thought of his 5 friends because they have been pursuing the same goal together, right? So it is very important to have that goal set in mind. That direction is very important. That is also a kind of a faith because you are expecting something that you have not experienced. You are just having a sense that, an idea that there is this thing that I want to achieve. That is your faith, that is your conviction. That is the driving force. So it is not just blind faith that it doesn't matter whatever happens, I don't care, I just believe in this thing.
Yes. The difference. We have to know why we believe in
Yeah.
or this option. Destination.
Yes. And I think if one goes by some of the basic teachings of the Buddha, there is no possibility that one would have, wrong understanding or wrong approach, or weaker faith in the teaching, because from the very beginning, what is made clear in the Suttanta teaching is that you try to know yourself, you try to understand yourself and how your mind and body is functioning. So if you are overcome by negative forces like greed, hatred, jealousy, delusion, it is not beneficial for your own well-being. And being overcome by these negative forces, when you interact with the society, it is not going to bring any benefit to the society, right? So this is a very practical teaching, and you can experiment and experience this here and now, right? When you are joyful, everything appears to be very beautiful. When you communicate with people, right? But when you are in misery, when you are in suffering, in agony, you are overcome by hatred, jealousy, and so on. Not just you suffer, but when you interact with the society, it is like you want to share or spread your own suffering to the society as well.
So it will take our work for me and like a form of shadow.
So when you have this basic understanding, you clearly know what you are supposed to do in life, right? So when you are believing some teacher for a certain teaching, you know why you are believing in that, believing the teacher, for what reason, where do you want to go. Yes, so that is the role of faith. Now there are five, they are called pancha bala, panchindriya, panchabala, right, Achan? Panchindriya, panchabala. What are those? Saddha, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. Yeah, so Saddha, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. Sati, Sati. Saddha, Sati, Viriya, Samadhi, and Panya. Here I cannot put the diacritical marks. Now here you see, no, Panya comes after Samadhi. But anyway, this is not to be understood in a linear way, Saddha, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. Viriya Saddha and Panya put together. Okay. Saddha, Panya, Virya, Samadhi. And then you have Sati. So 5. Why is that? Because these two represent two opposite things. Saddha represent strong conviction, strong faith. Panya represent your intellectual understanding, your wisdom. So there should be a kind of a balance, right? Not too much of intellectual exercise, not too much of conviction alone. So your Saddha, your faith represent your emotional aspect. That should be guided by your wisdom. But too much of intellectual exercise is also not good if you do not have enough emotional content. You see? So these two should go together. One should guide the other. And what is the thing that makes balance between these two is sati, mindfulness. Similarly, between virya and samadhi, virya represent excessive energy, effort. So sometimes in one's practice, one may put too much of effort that why I'm not progressing. Probably I need to sit this way, I need to eat this way, I need to do this way. So one is putting so much of pressure on oneself. Too much of pressure. So that should be balanced with the practice of samadhi. Samadhi literally means calming down, right? Composing. Samadhi should balance your energy. And again, sati is the factor that makes the balance. So sati is present, should be present in saddha, panya, virya, and samadhi. These are called 5 powers, panchabala, 5 powers, and also panchindriya, 5 factors of enlightenment. Yes, so do you remember anything from our previous discussion? Do you want to share your thoughts on our previous discussion? We have discussed about the relationship between philosophy and science, right? Knowledge versus faith, and how one's faith has to be supported by evidence and data and logic. Otherwise it would just remain as mere belief, not a concrete belief, concrete faith. The nature of knowledge, and then we have discussed generally how one knows things, right? Different people of different discipline follow different approaches to come to truth. Rationalism, and then the problem with rationalism, right? Reliabilism and coherentism. These are few points we have covered. Empiricism, and finally, after the discussion of induction, deduction, and abduction, the scope and limitations of scientific knowledge, right? So today we are going to look at the Buddhist approach to epistemology based on this article, because this is the article that I sent to everyone as a main article, even though, as I said, this is a bit difficult to understand, but I marked certain point to discuss so that we can have at least a brief understanding of what is discussed in this essay. Yes. Okay, let us slowly begin to read this essay and discuss. So this is by this author, John D. Dune. I don't know how to read this. Okay, let's read it together. For Buddhist thinkers, philosophy should aid one in eliminating suffering and obtaining happiness. So this is the basic understanding in Buddhism, and this is the basic goal. So as we have been discussing that you need to set up your goal, right? So what is the goal in your life? With that goal only you move forward, right? So it is the same with regard to any discipline. What do they want to find out? Why do they want to do that? In the case of scientists as well, right? As we have been discussing, their approach is also to unfold the mystery of nature, to know the truth, the reality, right? But then again, they try to do all their experimentation, so on, in such a way that they can, how do you say, what is the word? I forgot. So what it means is that so that they can make use of this finding in a practical way rather than just knowing the truth, right? So therefore they come up with different types of technologies and so on. And the purpose is to make life more beautiful, right? And convenient.
Yes, I also heard from what is it was the main role of philosophy. He said that philosophy is one important thing for suicide. Understand the philosophy. I can answer the question like why you're lying.
Yeah. So yes, so in Buddhism, the ultimate purpose of knowing the truth is to be able to get rid of suffering to obtain happiness. So that is the understanding. That is what is mentioned in the first statement here. They maintain that to achieve those ends, one must eliminate ignorance, a fundamental mental flaw that is suffering's basic cause. Ignorance, right? So the main cause for the suffering is regarded as ignorance. And we need to keep this in mind because this ignorance represent a completely different understanding, or you can say distorted understanding of reality. So whatever cognitive process, cognition, understanding, perception you talk about in the samsaric world, if its foundation basis is ignorance, then everything that is built up on this ignorance is going to be wrong, not right. But then the question is, which is more wrong, which is less wrong, which will make you to eliminate all the falsity. Although variously construed, ignorance inevitably involves the mistaken belief that a fixed, unchanging personal essence or Atman lies at the core of each person's identity. So this is made very clear here that when you talk about avidya, specifically it is connected to the idea, the mistaken belief that there is a fixed, unchanging personal essence or Atman, self or soul in every individual. So therefore, whatever you want to know, it is you who want to know, right? It is I who want to experience. It is I who want to know. I perceive, I see, I cognize. So this is the fundamental mistake. Hence, to eliminate ignorance, one must eradicate that belief. And to do so, Buddhist philosophers stress the importance of seeing things as they are, a corrective cognitive state. That is yatha bhuta darshana, seeing things as they are, through which one knows that persons necessarily lack essence. The need to give an account of such a state leads to a concern with epistemology in Buddhist thought from its earliest period in South Asia, between 500 BCE to 100 CE. Yeah. So when there is an understanding of how everything is functioning as it is functioning, without putting any kind of judgment, attachment to self-idea and so on. So that is called yatha bhuta darshan, a corrective cognitive state. A corrective cognitive state. Although early Buddhism evinces a nascent epistemology, precise and sophisticated accounts of knowledge do not begin until adequate tools are developed by South Asian philosophers, primarily non-Buddhist, starting no later than the 1st century CE. The Buddhist theorist Vasubandhu initially appropriates these tools, but Dignaga first employs them in a manner that reflects all the issues addressed by later Buddhist epistemologists. Finally, Dharmakirti modifies and expands Dignaga's work in such a manner that all subsequent Buddhist epistemologists in India and Tibet cast their work as interpretations of Dharmakirti's philosophy. Hence, for the purpose of this entry, Buddhist epistemology refers to the thought of Dharmakirti and his subsequent interpreters in both India and Tibet. So here it seems that the writer is focusing mostly on Dharmakirti's interpretation, where epistemological works continue to be composed. In their voluminous writings, Buddhist epistemologists express a variety of competing views developed in distinct historical contexts. Nevertheless, they largely agree on the following central theories and principles. So these are some of the important figures: Vasubandhu, Dignaga, Dharmakirti. Now, Dignaga and Dharmakirti belong to the tradition of Madhyamaka. Vasubandhu is an Abhidhammika actually. So he was the proponent of Sarvastivada Abhidharma. For example, he wrote texts like Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya, and later on he changed his views and joined the Yogacara school. Even in the Yogacara school of thought, you have Abhidharma system. So basically, Vasubandhu is a great exponent of Abhidharma thoughts. Dingnaga and Dharmakirti are, exponent of, in different ways, they are exponent of emptiness theory. Model of knowing. Buddhist epistemologists examine knowledge in terms of a knowledge event or act of knowing. Pramiti, act of knowing, knowledge event. So the question is, how does the process of knowing take place, right?
So Pramiti means
Act of knowing.
how is our mind function?
Yeah, act of knowing, the process of knowing, the functioning of knowing. Their account rests on the claim that the mind consists of a series of causally related instantaneous mental moments, each of which is ontologically irreducible. So this is a discussion of Abhidharma. So according to Abhidharma, in the Suttanta text, you just have these ideas of, mind is the preceding factor of everything, right? Mind determines everything. For example, when it says Chatanahang Bhikkhave Kammang Vadami, intention is karma, intention is action. And in the Dhammapada, when it says Mano Pubbangama Dhamma, mind is the leading factor of everything. Also, Chittena Niyati Loke, the world is led by the mind. So mind is given the precedence, right? But in the Abhidharma tradition, you have the discussion of what does it mean by mind? What is it consisted of? Right? And then they come up with the idea of dharmas. And in that discussion, they talk about cognitive process, different mind moments, so brief, so fast that it is not easy for a common individual to understand. So the examples given is that in a blink of an eye, thousands of mind moments pass, right? So it is an area of practitioners, highly developed spiritual practitioners, to really decipher the mind moments, right? So now here the discussion is, when you talk about knowing something or the cognitive, a cognition taking place of any object or anything, how many mind moments pass? Or is there really a direct perception of a thing that is taking place? Or it is just mind made? And why it says that, each moment of which is ontologically irreducible. So according to Abhidharma, as you can see in the Theravada Abhidharma or Sarvastivada Abhidharma, the Abhidharmikas come up with a certain number of dharmas, right? In the Theravada Abhidharma, for example, Chitta is discussed in terms of 89 types, and Chetasika, mental factors, 52, Rupadhammas, 28. So these are the dharmas. And when they come up with these numbers, they say that these are irreducible factors. Irreducible means basic factors. They cannot be reduced any further. So in that sense, they are ontologically irreducible. So how do you say?
Irreducible because means it's just conception or opposite. Because if I can think
Yeah, these are psychologically, mentally you analyze, psychologically analyze, not that you analyze physically, but because it is not possible. because of several reasons. One is that these dharmas do not exist alone, do not exist and function alone. Multiple dharmas function together, and these multiple dharmas in every single moment function as a cause, giving rise to the next moment, which is also consisted of multiple dharmas. So in the analysis, it is just, you can say that it's just mental dissection, mental analysis, because they do not and they cannot exist and function alone. Thus, as a mental event, the act of knowing is ontologically identical to a mental moment. So now here the question is, the act of knowing, and so the act of knowing is a mental process, right? But then the functioning or the working of a particular moment that represent ontological aspect, what it is, right? The knowing, the cognitive aspect, and how do you say, as it functions, as it exists, or as it is functioning, and as it is known, the aspect of knowing and the aspect of its functioning or existence. The act of knowing occurs when the mind comes into a direct or indirect causal relation with an object such that with other conditions in place, the next mental moment contains an image, akara, of the object. So what happens between the two moments is that the first moment probably may have a direct or indirect cognition or perception of an object, and the knowing probably takes place in the next moment, whereas you do not have the direct or indirect perception. What you have, a kind of an image from the previous moment. Due to the ontological unity of a mental moment, the notion that the mental moment contains an image of the object is metaphorical. In fact, the image is ontologically identical to that mental moment itself. So when you say that the next moment is taking the image from the previous moment, right? So as it is said here, the idea that the previous mental moment contains an image is metaphorical because the previous moment itself is an image. So image, what do you call image, is representative of that mental moment. There is no distinction. It is just for the sake of explanation and understanding, this metaphor is used, because it is that previous moment that is giving rise to the next moment. So that previous moment is the image. So you are knowing that image only. Nevertheless, from a phenomenal standpoint, the act of knowing presents itself with two images, the aforementioned object image, grahya akara, and the subject image, grahaka akara, grahaka akara. Yeah. Grahya akara and grahaka akara. Grahaka akara. Yeah. Grahya akara, grahaka akara. Grahya and grahaka. Subject and object. Image of akara. The latter accounts for the sense of subjectivity in the act of knowing, whereas the former accounts for the content of the cognition. So here there is a discussion of just two moments. So there is a interaction that took place between your cognitive aspect, mental aspect, and the object, mind, moment, and the object, right? And then it is talking about the mind moment capturing an image, or mind moment is producing an image that is becoming the cause for the arising of next moment, and that next moment is functioning as a subject, because that is the moment that is knowing the previous moment, and that previous moment is functioning as an object. You see? Yeah. Do you get it or not?
You can repeat.
These moments are actually from the Theravada perspective. Of course, I think this is based on Dharmakirti's explanation, so there is some difference there. But in Theravada understanding, you need to have 17 sub moments to complete a moment, a mind moment. 17, why not 18 years? Yeah, so 17 is the number that they came up with. I don't know why not 18, but the 17 is counted in relation to matter moment. So a moment of matter in terms of changing nature, a mind moment changes 17 times faster than a matter moment. So the process explained in this way: by the time you know an external object, so the example given is, for example, falling off a mango, ripe mango from a tree, and you are in deep sleep. When the mango falls, you are taking rest in a mango group, mango garden, for example. You are in deep sleep in Bhavanga state. When the mango falls, by the time you wake up, because of the sound of a mango falling and recognizing it, that it is a mango, it takes 17 moment, sub moment, to give rise to this cognition that this is a mango, this is a ripe mango. To come to that knowledge, it takes 17 moments, and it is compared to one moment of the matter. Okay, so the 17 moments, as it is explained in the Abhidhamma, Theravada Abhidhamma, is from the moment of the vibration, becoming slowly aware, deciding what it is, coming up with the conclusion. Because to know that this is a mango, you need to have the concept of mango first. And you compare it. Also, for example, if it is ripe or unripe, it could be apple, it could be orange. Why do you call it a mango? Right? So you identify the mango with your understanding of mango, your concept. And it takes some time. But we do not understand it. As soon as we see a mango, we say that it is a mango, right? We do not see the process.
What we call this calculation is computer, and it's also an idea that how they acknowledge. So all the people, all the human beings. One point.
True, that is also true. Yeah, so this is the process here. Now you have a stream of bhavanga here, and after that this is stream of bhavanga. Past bhavanga, vibrational bhavanga, arrest bhavanga, 5-door adverting, eye consciousness, receiving, investigation, determining. So from here, 3 to 7, almost 8.
So I think that come from the word Hava.
Yeah, bhava anga.
So this is which from attractive.
Bhavanga, bhavanga represent, how do you say? State of unconscious mind. So this is representing a kind of noun, isn't it? Bhavanga.
Yeah, I think this is
State of mind. Yeah. Could be probably. Bhavanga. Let me check. Bhavanga, according to the dictionary, it is a neuter noun. It is a state of subconscious or unconscious mind. Yes. Yes. So a stream of bhavanga means when the mind is in the subconscious level, it is not active, it is not functioning, right? So it is in a, how do you say, sleep state. First bhavanga, vibrational bhavanga, arrest bhavanga. This refer to when the past bhavanga is becoming aware, it is getting vibrated, getting disturbed. From this 3 and especially from 4 until 7, 5-door bhavanga means 5-door adverting means when your senses, indriyas, becoming active. So here the example is given of eye consciousness, This is just an example. I is one of the five door, right?
Pure consciousness.
Yeah, nose, tongue, body. So it is an example of eye consciousness. You are opening your eyes, or the attention is on the eye consciousness, and then you are receiving some information, investigating, and to determine what it what it is, it takes how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 moments, 7 to 8 moments. This is called Javana Chitta. The process of determining. You determine what it is. Then finally you register. And it takes 2 moments to register. Then you come with the conclusion that this is a mango. Sub moments of each mind moment. So this is representative of one mind moment. It is different in the Suttanta. This is the process in the Suttanta. Sense organ, eye, for example, sense object, corresponding consciousness, that is eye consciousness. When these three come together, it is called contact. So the discussion of mind movement in Abhidharma is, I don't know, probably, yeah, until perception, I guess. When these three come together, there is a feeling and there is a perception. And then after that, reasoning about and conceptual proliferation. These are representative of, what is it, and if you like it or not, why do you like it, why do you don't like it, you want it or you do not want it. So that is the complex process. Venerable Kinzang wants to say something.
No, teacher.
Are you feeling okay?
Yes, teacher. So now morning time, because so very cold in the winter time.
I see. It's very cold in Bhutan now.
Yes, teacher. So winter time.
This morning we also had a bit of fog, yes. Achan wants to say something. I see Mr. Sami joining after many days.
Yes, teacher.
Yes, I think,
Sorry about that.
think some question.
But in Dharmasala also. Ah, you are staying in Dharmasala. Wow.
Yeah, it's also cold, but I guess not as much as Bhutan right now. Yeah.
The weather here is quite okay. Sometimes hot in the daytime. Dharmasala is in India. Yeah.
It's in
So,
the Himalayas.
yeah, it is close to the Himalayas.
It's actually in the Himalayan mountain range. It's like considered like the capital of the Himalayas.
I see. I have not
Yeah.
been to this place.
We are on 1,000 meter elevation.
Wow.
Yeah, and I can share some pictures if everybody's interested to see. It's a very beautiful place and very good for learning Dharma also.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So it seems like you have a lot of snow this time.
In Dharamshala itself, it hasn't snowed for 10 years. But if you walk like a half an hour up from here to, it's called Makloidganj and Dharamkot, and that place you will find snow. But just looking from out here, I mean, just looking up the mountain, we have a view of the snowy Himalayas behind us all the time.
I see.
So, yeah.
I see. I hope you are enjoying there, having a good
I
time.
am. Yeah, I am. But it was a bit overwhelming in the first few weeks to get settled down, and you have to make the papers, apply for the police and everything,
I
so
see.
they know where you are. And
Um,
still, that process is not over yet. So yeah, that's why I've been missing some of my classes.
I see. Anyway, it is good that you are able to join the classes again.
Is there some essay or some homework that I couldn't submit? Maybe I should be informed about it.
Some this semester we are practicing a kind of how do you say, more involvement from the students. So I am providing some essays especially so that you can go through them and then come up with some kind of summary.
Okay.
So I think I have, if you check your emails, there are some that you have missed. I think it should not be a big issue for you if you just, sit for a moment and then go through the documents. You can write your summaries. That would be okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I think probably we are supposed to have a break now, right, until 10, and then we can resume our class after the break. That would be good. Sorry?
7 minutes or 10 minutes?
10 minutes is okay. Yeah, 10 o'clock we can start again. Okay, see you after the break. If you are talking about Nibbana to be the final goal of Buddhist practice. Now, if you have not experienced Nibbana, you do not know. So you have to just have faith in the words of the enlightened masters. But then again, you can have a kind of intellectual understanding. How is it so? Even to some extent, experiential understanding also, because the way Nibbana is explained is that it is none of what it is in samsara, right? And we have the experience of samsara, right? And the samsaric experience is explained in terms of dukkha. right? And what is Nibbana is exactly opposite of samsara, exactly opposite of what you have been going through, what you have been experiencing in samsara. Now, if you have that strong desire to be free from samsara, there are approaches, there are methods, and from the beginning, you know, when you walk, step on the methods, you know that it is working for you based on your experiences in samsara and based on your understanding and knowledge with regard to your practice. You have a clear understanding of samsara, that we are in samsara and I exist here, I experience all sorts of things, right? That is samsara. Of course, I experience great hatred, delusion. I experience temporary happiness as well, right? I become sick. I become, agitated. All these things are real for me, right? And this is the nature of samsara. And then there is a discussion of going out of samsara, right? And then when there is a discussion of practice, it says that be mindful, right? Be mindful of what you have been doing and try to be more gentle, right? Try to observe your thoughts, your actions, try to generate more positive psychological states. Once you start to do that, you can see immediate result. You feel more peaceful, more relaxed, right? So we have a faith or belief in the teaching of the Buddha that there is Nibbana, that is representative of supreme bliss, freedom from suffering. We did not experience it, but we have faith. We have to believe the teachings of the Buddha, but it is not ungrounded. That is what I mean, right? And what you are saying is true, that because we did not experience it, we have to have faith in the teacher, in the teaching. Whereas in the case of science, you do the experimentation, you come up with the result, and that result or that truth, so-called truth, may be true for now. Tomorrow it may be false. Later on it may be false, right? In science. But again, how many people are doing the experiment themselves? Few people, right? Rest of the people who believe, who take sight of the science, they just believe in the discovery of the scientist, right? That is also their belief. Now, if somebody says that there are thousands of galaxies, how do I know? I just read and believe the writing of this scientist. And in the same way, if Buddhas and enlightened ones say that there is a pure land, how do I know? I do not know, right? I just have to believe the words of the enlightened masters.
For me, it's a little difficult to write that and sorry to say that, but it's true for me now.
Sorry? Difficult to what? I did not understand.
Understanding is a little difficult for me now to write the staff or the third line. Yes, actually, not like another Buddha teaching, right? About habits or about discipline or about wisdom or about how to live your life. So the practice not like this, but to live a pure life for me now is a difficult thing.
For what?
For me, it's a difficult thing to raise such up.
Yeah. So it is not ungrounded, it should be grounded. It should be, how do you say, reasonable. It's not blind faith. Okay, it should be reasonable faith. Yes, let us continue with our usual discussion. Okay, so what it says here is that on the Buddhist theory of mind, all cognitions must have an object, which is to say that all cognitions have an object image. Not every cognition, however, is an act of knowing. Instead, only two types of cognitions: perception, that is pratyaksha, and inference, anumana, can be acts of knowing, because only they can satisfy two criteria: they are reliable, avisangvada, and they are motivators of action, pravartaka. Reliability concerns the justification of knowledge. The fact of being a motivator of action is a psychological feature that reflects teleological and ontological concerns. Teleological means exhibiting or relating to design or purpose, especially in nature, involving the belief that everything has a purpose or use. So what it says here is that in the stream of consciousness, not every mind movement is representative of cognitive mind, cognitive aspect of mind, because there are moments in mind that do not function as a cognitive mind, knowing or perceiving, right? So only two types of cognitions are representative of cognitive mind. One is perception or pratyaksha, the other is inference, anumana. Pratyaksha represent direct perception, direct knowing. Inference represent inferential knowing, that is indirect knowing. Okay, and of course this inference also should be based on a certain previous experiences or knowledge. Let's talk about reliability, because two factors are mentioned here. One is reliability and the other is motivators of action. And if you remember, even when discussing about epistemology in science, there was a discussion of reliability as well there. For Buddhist epistemologists, an act of knowing, whether it be a perception or an inference, is reliable in that it directs one to an object with the desired telic efficacy. So it can be direct perception, pratyaksha, or it can be inference. So it is considered as a reliable to the extent that it has a desired efficacy, arthakiriya. So it has a certain effect on the part of this cognition. On this criterion, an act of knowledge is distinguished from an unreliable cognition in one of two ways. Either it directs one to an object that can fulfill a particular goal, or it presents itself as the fulfillment of that goal. So when you talk about act of knowledge in the cognitive process, it says that in one of the two ways, it is distinguished from unreliable cognition. So the differentiation here is between reliable cognition and unreliable cognition, right? So it says that either it directs one to an object that can fulfill a particular goal, or it presents itself as the fulfillment of that goal. So either it could function as a moment that is directing to the fulfillment of a goal, or it can present itself as a fulfillment of the goal. Suppose, for example, that one is cold and that one seeks to warm one's hands at a fire. Because the hearth contains a fire, hearth means the place where you lit fire, that is capable of fulfilling one's goal, the perception of a fire in the hearth is deemed reliable. When one reaches the hearth, the sensation of heat on one's hands is itself the fulfillment of one's goal. Thus, that cognition of heat is also reliable. So, in this simile, what you can see is that when you feel cold and you want to have some, warm from a certain fire, your perception of fire in the hearth is a moment of cognition that is leading to the goal of having directly experiencing the fire. And when you go there and you experience directly the heat from the fire, that is itself the fulfillment of the goal. Thus, that cognition of heat is also reliable. By grounding reliability in telic efficacy, Buddhist thinkers seek to justify beliefs by interpreting them as descriptions of their objects' causal characteristics. Hence, the ultimate arbiter, determiner of a cognition's reliability is the way in which it presents its objects in causal terms. So, causal efficacy. What kind of causal efficacy a moment is containing? What kind of following cognition that it is capable of generating? If it presents the object's causal characteristics such that the object is capable of functioning in the expected fashion, then the cognition is reliable. Otherwise, it is not. In some cases, the evidence for the desired functionality is given with the cognition itself. For example, the sensation of warmth requires no other cognition to verify that one is feeling warm. Right? So this is direct cognition. Such cognitions are said to be intrinsically reliable, and this applies to all inferences and some perceptions. In other instances of perception, another cognition must verify the cognition's content. One may only glimpse the fire from a corner of the room, and one must appeal to inferential evidence such as a smoke or a subsequent perception to verify that one was indeed seeing fire. A perception that requires such confirmation is said to be extrinsically reliable. So directly you are experiencing fire or warmth, that is your direct perception. But for example, you do not experience fire, but you see a certain smoke coming out, right, from some place, and you have a cognition of fire, right? So that is your inference. Purpose and motivation, this is another aspect. Arguments for a cognition's reliability generally serve to justify a belief. Thus, one's belief that there is a fire in the hearth is true inasmuch as the cognition that includes that belief reliably represents the causal characteristics of the object in question. So you believe that in the hearth there is fire because you have experienced it, and because when you went to the hearth, you directly experienced fire. So what do you think of this hearth having fire? Your expectation is met when you go there and directly experience it. For that cognition to be an act of knowing, however, that cognition must include other dispositions. Of prime importance is the desire to know, without which the cognition could not arise. It may be true that there is a fire in the hearth, but without some purpose, one will not have a cognitive event in which that belief occurs. Thus, for Buddhists, the account of knowledge as justified true belief is inadequate if that account ignores the role played by cognitive dispositions, especially those related to purpose. So here, one other aspect is given importance, that is desire to know. That is your desire and your attention. Even if you are feeling cold, if you do not think of warming yourself, right? If you do not think of earth, there is no cognition of fire, right? So it is your motivation, your desire to know, your attention, your focus. That is another aspect that should be present. In appealing to dispositions related to purpose, Buddhist epistemologists hold that the reliability of a belief shifts according to the purpose to which it is tied. One might believe, for example, that the object on one's table is an unbreakable vase, although it is in fact fragile. Relative to the purpose of containing a bouquet, the cognition in which that belief occurs is reliable, since the vase can function so as to hold flowers. But related to the aim of cracking a walnut shell, a cognition in which that belief occurs would not be reliable, since the vase lacks the causal capacity to crack open a nut. By thus evaluating complex beliefs within various teleological contexts, Buddhist thinkers can accept some philosophical claims in one context while rejecting them in another, a strategy that is central to Buddhist soteriology. So here the example is given of a vase. You can believe that there is a vase on the table that is unbreakable, which is actually fragile. But the purpose of this vase is to contain bouquet, right? That is what you put inside the vase. The functioning of vase is to hold the flower. Now, if you are saying that with this vase you can crack a walnut shell, that is not reliable because the vase doesn't have that power to crack open a nut. So with these two examples, the conclusion that is drawn here is that Buddhist thinkers can accept some philosophical claims in one context while rejecting them in another. Because the vase is not unbreakable. If you hit it against the walnut, the vase will break. In relating reliability to purpose, Buddhist epistemologists argue that an act of knowing must not only be reliable, but must also be a motivator of purposeful action. Frequently, this assertion is formulated as a requirement for novelty, whereby an act of knowing reveals a previously unknown object. Ajñātārtha prakāśa. On either version, motivation or novelty, this requirement points not only to the role of purpose, but also to the notion that an act of knowing reduces doubt. And this is very clear. When you know something, your doubt is gone. That is, the cognition must pass a threshold whereby the person, usually idealized as judicious, prakshavant, is willing to act on a particular goal based on the content of that cognition. We have to keep in mind that this entire discussion of Buddhist epistemology is focused on the first few statements: eliminating suffering and obtaining happiness, removing ignorance. Okay, so because here most oftentimes you hear the discussion of goal and objective, okay, of your knowing. The early epistemologist Dignaga appears less concerned with the utter removal of doubt, but Dharmakirti and most subsequent thinkers maintain that an act of knowing grants apodictic certainty, even if certainty must sometimes be supplied by a subsequent cognition. Apodictive means clearly established or beyond dispute. Certainty, absolutely certain. So an act of knowing grants apodictive certainty, even if certainty must sometimes be supplied by a subsequent cognition. So once you know something, your doubt is removed. That is the idea, but it is not removed by the time of your cognition. It may take subsequent cognitive moments as well, several moments. Now, this is useful, I think, especially in the context of attaining enlightenment, because as it is explained, once you when you become enlightened or awakened, in a few moments, this entire experience of enlightenment takes place, because all your doubts with regard to self, idea, and so on are removed completely, and it takes several moments. There is, for example, particular explanation with regard to clear comprehension about Four Noble Truths: dukkha, samudaya, nirodha, and magga. So when we study, we have intellectual understanding, right? But when you truly realize as a noble person, I'm not sure, probably, I think they talk about 16 moments or something. I'm not exactly sure, I have to check it again. 16 subsequent moments it happens. And once you pass through this, you are enlightened, you are awakened, because you have gone through a clear comprehension, intuitive understanding of this Four Noble Truths. Then, at that moment, of course, it is based on all your efforts that you have, put in previously. But the moment of enlightenment, when it actually happens, so these moments pass by very quickly, and you have a very clear comprehension of these things, and then all your doubts are removed, and then you are awakened. Finally, the notion that an act of knowing must motivate action is also tied to ontological issues. The chief concern here is to eliminate the possibility that universals could be the objects of perception. As will be evident in the following text, The Buddhist strategy is to make perception the actual motivator of action while relegating the determinate content of perception to a subsequent judgment, which is not strictly speaking the motivator. Ontological issues. What are the ontological issues in Buddhism? What is truly real? Outside of your cognition, outside of your perception, what really exists?
What as minor and Buddhist ontology put a lot of effort just for eliminate, because here lies the chief concern here is to eliminate the possibility that universes could be the object of perception. And it seems for me sometimes that now it's eliminating the possibility that it seems totally the universe is based on the perception.
Yeah, that is true. So there is a discussion of phenomenological understanding. That means how you experience everything. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect is how everything really is. That is the matter of ontological discussion, right? Ontological issues. So what you can find in Buddhist discourses is that once you have this idea of self, which is said to be the fundamental error, whatever you experience becomes wrong perception, right? And once you are free from that idea, then what remains, if you talk of it in terms of experience, that experience is knowledge, that is the ontological existence. So there is no distinction between what is and what is being known or experienced. It is one and the same. Knower is the known, known is the knower. Or in other words, it is just the process of functioning of dharmas. So next section focus on perception and illusion. Let's go through this and probably we will have a clearer understanding. Perception and illusion. As one of the two types of cognitions that are both reliable and motivate action, a perception is an act of knowledge. The Buddhist model of perception is causal and eidetic, relating to or denoting mental images having unusual vividness and detail as if actually visible. Eidetic. An object interacts with a sense organ such that with other factors in place, the next moment of mind occurs with an image or simulacrum, sadrishya or sarupya.
I think it's more from nothing.
Probably of the object. So what it says is that between the two moments, the previous moment of cognition may appear to be represent a very clear image of the cognition to the next moment, next cognitive moment. Unlike inference, in perception, the image is produced directly by the object, and the reliability of perception is based on this direct causal relation. As a mental moment, a perception is causally conditioned by the previous mental moment, including all the dispositions and physiological conditions that contribute to its occurrence. In a perception, however, not only the previous mental moment, but also the perceived object is contributing causally to the occurrence of the perception. It is quite clear. Hence, the causal character of the mental moment, that is a perception, is restrained by the causal characteristics of the object to which it is in relation through the sense organ. So basically what it means is that if you give rise to a perception through eye door, it would give rise to eye consciousness, not ear consciousness, right? So it is determined and particular to that alone, right? And it could be also, if you want to look at more particular aspect of it, it could be like, you know, your this cognitive moment arising from eye door, when it is representative of eye consciousness. It could also be like, you know, there could be a kind of likeness or dislikeness, right, attached to this moment. So it is very specific to that. Thus, a perception is reliable. It accurately reflects the object's causal characteristics because the causal constraints imposed by the object on the perception's content are indicative of that object's causal characteristics. To put it another way, the perception of blue with the causal capacity to produce a blue image. So it is not just that you are perceiving something as blue, but it is that object itself also, it has the power to generate the perception blue. So it has its effect on you as well, on your cognitive mind. Otherwise, a blue image, a blue color can give rise to your cognitive moment, a perception, which is not, you know, a blue image, probably a red image. This appeal to a causal relation between perceptual content and object compels Buddhist epistemologists to face the problem of illusion. So now here there is a discussion of illusion. Now you see a blue image and you have this perception of blue. One is that you are able to perceive it. The other is that the object is capable of producing this impact on you in your cognitive process. Now what happens? A favorite Tibetan example is the Blue Snow Mountain. So this is an interesting you know, example or simile given here. Blue Snow Mountain. Now snow, when you talk about snow mountain, it should be white, not blue. But what does it mean by blue snow mountain here? Let us look at this.
Background is sky blue.
That is true. That is the reflection, and that is not representative of actual blue in the snow mountain. It's coming from somewhere else, and how the vision gets distorted.
I just something about the chromatoxia.
What is that?
This is a medical. That means there are some people who see the red who see this color and he will say this is blue.
Yeah.
But who's more than that?
Yes.
And if also that Dr. told me, if you use a lot of computer or at home, maybe when you're older, when you get older, I will have that.
I see.
Kind of disease. Beautiful disease. Yeah, color blindness. Yeah.
Colorblind, yes. Yeah, so when one looks at a snowy Himalayan peak on a clear day, I think only Mr. Sami can do that now. From Dharmasala, the snow cap appears blue because it reflects the sky's color. Here the cognition is a spurious perception, pratyaksha abhasha, because it lacks reliability. In that snow is not blue, but since the perceptual content, the image, is distorted by causal factors not given with the object, the content itself does not provide any basis for recognizing that distortion. Instead, some other perception or inference would need to reveal that distortion. Still, as noted earlier, some perceptions are alleged to be intrinsically reliable, such that they do not require confirmation by a subsequent act of knowing. What then would distinguish those perceptions such that, unlike the sight of a blue snow, they could never be spurious? So, in this case, there is a possibility of having wrong perception, right? If one does not have, necessary tools or process to investigate it properly. Unlike the direct perception, for example, if you are really directly experiencing heat, you do not need any other, thing to make it clear, or that it is the fire that you are experiencing now, right? So because that is direct perception. And then in the example of seeing smoke, based on your previous experiences and so on, you can say that there is a heat or there is a fire there, and because of that there is smoke, right? In the example of blue snow sky, there is a possibility of distorted view because the object itself does not contain this aspect of blue, right? It is a reflection. So if you take it as actual object for your cognition, then you have a wrong perception. Buddhist epistemologists do not provide an easy answer to this question, but their theory of perceptual judgment provides a partial response. On their view, perception itself is indeterminate in that it involves no conceptual or linguistic operation. Now here, when you talk about the actual perceptual process, it says that it doesn't contain any judgment. It is just some kind of mechanism that is going on. Your indriyas, or I don't know, coming in contact with external objects, or even between the two mind movements, probably this is just what is going on, what is happening. But when you say this is this or this is that, that is coloring it, right? That is adding a different layer to it. A purely indeterminate cognitive event, however, cannot be either reliable or unreliable because it conveys no knowledge about the causal characteristics of its object in relation to one's goal. Hence, the reliability of a perception consists in that it leads to an immediate subsequent perceptual judgment. Tat prastalabdhanishchaya. Tat prastalabdhanishchaya. That does provide that knowledge. Strictly speaking, only the judgment is reliable or unreliable, in that it only describes the object in a determinate fashion. Nevertheless, since the form of that judgment is causally constrained by the image presented by indeterminate perception, the perception itself is considered reliable. So here you have a discussion of two layers. One is indeterminate perceptual process, the actual process in the stream of consciousness. The other is this. So in the Abhidharmic term, I think that it is called, how do you say? Process consciousness and process-free consciousness. Probably Viti Chitta and Viti Mukta. So there is an underlying consciousness, momentary consciousness that is going on, and then there is a process consciousness that is full of cognitive moments. So what is the differentiation between the two? Even the process-free one, indeterminate, consciousness or perception, that is also reliable because it is based on that the other one is taking place. So that is the reasoning provided here, I think. You see, so last sentence says that, nevertheless, since the form of that judgment is causally constrained by the image presented by indeterminate perception, here what it says is that, yeah, in a way, I think it is similar to that process and process free, but so the process is taking place, and it is because of the occurrence of the process that you are having this cognitive moment. It's probably a different layer. Returning then to the problem of illusion, the theory of perceptual judgment means that an uninterpreted perception could not itself be an act of knowing, because lacking any depiction of its object's causal characteristics, it could not be reliable. But when the subsequent judgment describes the object, it must do so in relation to a particular goal. One explicit outcome of this in theory is that a perception may only be partially reliable, in that it can lead to correct judgments in regard to one goal, but not in regard to some other goal. For example, the perceptual content interpreted as blue snow might be unreliable in regard to one's need to identify a blue object, and yet it may still be reliable in regard to the need to identify snow. So, so if you are taking blue snow sky as the main object of your cognition, that may be false. But when you say that during this time, the states of snow is blue because of this reflection, so you are referring to the white snow mountain, but you are giving this level of blue snow mountain because of the reflection. You are not identifying it as a blue snow mountain, right? As an object. Although the implications of this claim are left covered, it seems likely that for Buddhist epistemologists, one factor in the intrinsic reliability of some perceptions is that the goals in question are such that the perceptual content could never be erroneously interpreted. In other words, the teleological context constrains the perceptual judgment such that incorrect interpretations of the perceptual content cannot occur in those cases. So in any case, what it says is that your perception could be of different layers, but as long as it serves a particular purpose or goal, it is reliable because it has the potentiality to give rise to next moment. So to that extent, all these perceptions are reliable. Perceptual judgment and ontology. Besides its role in intrinsic reliability, the theory of perceptual judgment is also closely allied to Buddhist ontological concerns. For Buddhist epistemologists, to exist is to be knowable. And since knowledge is a causal process, an existent entity must therefore be causally efficient. Likewise, any causally efficient entity must exist. So all the dharmas, they exist and they are knowable, right? So they are objects of knowledge, and they have the causal capacity to produce subsequent dharmas, subsequent moments. The pragmatic case of an entity's causal efficacy is its capacity to produce an image of itself in a perceiver's mind, and it is for this reason that Dharmakirti remarks, to exist is to be perceived. That means existence is representative of perception. The existence takes place in perception. Moreover, since any object of perception must exist, Buddhists are careful to exclude the possibility of perceiving any metaphysically objectionable entity, such as a fixed personal essence. Then what about fixed personal essence? Does it exist? I think here you can relate the example of Blue Snow Mountain. Fixed personal essence does not exist, but how it is reflected, how people have this perception. Yeah. You talk about dharmas or 5 aggregates which are real, for example. You look at them, their changes and their nature and everything, but still there is this idea of self. How does it take place?
I don't think that is, at least now, this is
Lastly, because a personal essence is considered a special case of a universal, Buddhists likewise reject the existence and hence the perception of universals. So, why some people believe in fixed personal essence? Because this personal essence is considered as a special case of a universal. It is there, I mean, you are connected to this universal consciousness, and then it is there. So this soul or self or personal entity is within you. And as it is considered as universal, special case of universal, so it says that Buddhists likewise reject the existence, hence the perception of universals. Instead, only particulars, Shwalakshana, truly exist, and particulars alone are the object of perception because only particulars are causally efficient. So particulars, every particular dharma has its own characteristics and so on, but this should be understood in terms of arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. The dharma of anger is, for example, different from the dharma of loving kindness, right? Or it's different from greed, Swalakshana. Perception cannot include universals, and linguistic or conceptual cognitions must include universals. Hence, perception must be a sheer apprehension of an object that is not linguistic or conceptual in character, but as noted earlier, the criterion of reliability requires a determinate cognition, which is necessarily conceptual or linguistic in form. Hence, on the one hand, perception must be the immediate apprehension of a particular through a non-conceptual image in the mind, and on the other hand, to be reliable and to motivate action, that non-conceptual content must be interpreted by a determinate cognition. The solution is to relegate the determinate aspect of a perception to an immediately subsequent judgment. And in doing so, Buddhists avoid the notion that linguistic or conceptual entities, that is universals, are the objects of perception. So here, why is there confusion is clearly explained. So the writer is pointing out that in the process of perception and cognition, if it is taken as it is happening, then there should not be any problem. The problem is because of identification, because of linguistic or conceptual cognitions, because of the usage of language or because of identifying it. Because so as it says here, perception must be a sheer apprehension of an object that is not linguistic or conceptual in character, free from language, free from concept. Why? Because when you attach concept and language, it must include universals, like the essence of a person. Anyway, so this, I think we cannot proceed further. We do not have enough time. But as you have noticed, this is really a very difficult essay to read. But I think it is a good experience for all of you to look at this type of essay. But you know, the rest of the thing you can just look at it. We are not going to continue to discuss on this. If necessary, I will probably look at the other documents and provide you some general explanations on Buddhist epistemology, a different understanding of it, probably early Buddhist explanation of it. Okay, then you'd have some clearer understanding with regard to Buddhist epistemology in early Buddhist text. These are from later Buddhist text. And as you have noticed, this is a discussion particularly focusing on cognitive process functioning of the stream of consciousness. That's all. Yes. In the meantime, you can look at the document that I sent to you today, this morning. You would have some, understanding with regard to early Buddhist approach to epistemology. Any question or remark? Otherwise, we can end our class here. It is already 11 now. If there is no question or remark, we can.
Teacher?
Yes.
I just have a question. I'm not sure if it's quite related to our topic today. But like, why do we feel as, as Putujana, let's say we are meditating for some time and trying to really understand this Dhamma, it feels like there is also some kind of like sadness associated with this concept of emptiness. It's like, is it because of our attachments, or is it maybe depending on some other mental chittas or chittasikas? I mean, how do you see it?
I think, yeah, that is true. Actually, sometimes we get excited about our spiritual practice as well. And to some extent, there is, I think, a certain kind of attachment there. But I think when one is constantly observing and checking oneself, it is okay as long as one is proceeding towards the path. And it is, I think, precisely because of this, how do you say, ups and downs in mind that we need teachers to guide us.
Yes.
It is true. It is true, because sometimes it so happens that even when you go through a certain practices, you experience a certain type of pleasantness, happy feeling. It could be even jhanic experience that one gets attached to that, and because of that, one cannot proceed. So that can also happen. That is true.
Yeah, but also like the opposite is also true. Like even if you have jhanic experiences and whatnot, but the opposite is true in the sense that there's some accompaniment sadness or depression in some cases. Like the spiritual path is not always roses, and you know, so it's like we are seeking this ultimate happiness, but at the same time it seems like the very idea of emptiness is the lack of happiness. You know, it's a lack of
Yeah, I
suffering, but at the
understand
same
what you
time like a
mean.
lack of happiness. I don't know. That's how that's how I see it at my current level of understanding.
I
I just
understand
wanted
what
to,
you mean.
yeah.
I think that in such situation, we really need some teachers, or probably nowadays, in the age of internet, you can listen to some talks by some of the masters, so that you can have that positive energy to move forward. This is actually true. I mean, and it is not a, it is primarily because of a kind of intellectual understanding with regard to the teaching, this highest kind of teaching, and also because of not being able to really truly handle this understanding fully well, because it affects on our emotions. That is true.
Oh, yeah.
That is
That's true. It's quite a big obstacle, at least I know for me at this point.
yeah, that is true. So I
Yeah.
would suggest you to read some books that, you know books of some masters that would guide you to the proper direction, and listen to some talks by, I don't know if you listen to Ajahn Brahmavamso or some people like that.
Yeah, I follow him. I follow most of the famous masters on like different podcast applications. But I think he's joking most of the time. It's really hard to get some kind of like very solid advice for like our practice.
So in that case, probably you can try to read some books by this Vietnamese master who passed away recently, Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh.
Oh, Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah, sure. I do also do that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, teacher.
Yeah. Okay, see you next week then. Bye bye for now,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Thank you.